I grew up in a small town in the middle of central Texas. In fact, some of the stories that I share from the platform involve this small town and the idea of, well, growing up redneck. I grew up redneck, skinning raccoons and hunting deer and running trot lines early in the morning and all that fun stuff. Baling hay was one of my first jobs besides bagging groceries. I did that before I was old enough to have a driver's license, driving tractors from one field to another. I grew up redneck. I also grew up in a town where there was more cows than people. And the racial diversity of my hometown, not so diverse. In fact, there were maybe 15 to 20% Hispanic and less than 2% African American in my hometown. Words like urban renewal, white flight, those meant absolutely nothing to me in my hometown. I, we had poverty. We had people who lived under the bridges. We had people who lived out on the edge of town in those rent by the day motels that really didn't have a job or a life of much sort. But people pretty much ignored them like they did everybody else. I mean, they would make their way into town and do a day job and buy some alcohol and then disappear into town, yeah, at the edge of the town again. They stayed in the skirts, if you will, kind of like urban areas. But as I've grown up and I've traveled around the world and I've been in places like the Congo and Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and Sao Paulo, Brazil, and Pelotas, Brazil, and uh, Kinshasa in the Congo, and Kisangani in the Congo, and Cuba, and Honduras, and walking the streets of London for 2 years with various groups of evangelists. I've seen a lot of different cultures and societies and problems. But even then, I haven't heard or studied words like gentrification. And when you start mixing in things like gentrification and urban renewal and white flight, there are some other things that start to come up, and you start to ask questions like, is it possible that systemic poverty is a racial issue? Or is it possible that certain policies that have been made because they benefited a small few impacted a large number of other people, and they weren't really racial, they were just downright selfish? I recently have come across, I say young woman, I presume she's younger than I am, by the name of Majora Carter. Quite the social activist, real estate developer, brilliant mind. I love to listen to her talk. She has a lot to say. She makes up some of her own words, to be honest with you. I mean, they make good sense. And when she explains what she means by the phrases she just said, you have to look at it and go, well, there's really not anything else that describes that. They're pretty good. So I'm going to challenge you, my viewers, to take some time and just go to YouTube and type in Majora, like major with an A on the end, Majora Carter. Watch her TED Talks. Watch some of her interviews on Black America. Watch what she has to say about growing up in the South Bronx. She pointed out one particular project that still just, I can't say makes my skin crawl, but it makes me think of meetings that I've been in, that those two bookend questions that I mentioned in the last episode of Learn to Work Communications, what's in it for me and what do I have to do to get it? Those are not just human need driving questions. They drive industry. Those two questions drive product development from inception. They drive marketing concepts at the highest level. They drive social engineering impact, even when it's unintended. What's in it for me and what do I have to do to get it drives politics. What's in it for me and what do I have to do to get it is the question of, do we need a border wall or not? What's in it for me? What do I have to do to get it? I'm telling you, those two questions can change the world if you have the answer to them. Is there a relationship between prison and poverty? Is there a relationship between that? Here's an example for you: building codes and city ordinances. I was speaking with a gentleman just yesterday. I won't say who or where, but in our conversation, I said, you know, in building use, this particular facility, here are a list of things that in other places might be banned: a pawn shop, a topless bar, a karaoke bar, a nightclub, a church, a flea market. What are your thoughts on bringing that kind of business to this area, to that building? And he said, none of those would happen. We have a targeted audience, if you will, of who we want to sell or lease that area of town to. And they would look like, and he started going down a list. And immediately going to my mind are some of these videos that I've been watching with Majora Carter. Because he has a very lofty-minded idea of what would generate revenue and change the landscape of that community. See, that community is filled with families who have been in their homes since the 1950s. Maybe mom and dad are gone now, but they built that home from the ground up with their own money. They worked, they sweated, they toiled. Maybe those homes are not as well kept now as they were when they were built, but it's still the same family 3 generations later living in that home. And in his own words, he said some of those homes are just beyond repair, and the day's just coming that they'll be bulldozed down. We don't want to run anybody out of their home, but when they give up on the home, when they decide to move somewhere better, when they find that there are better developed communities just a few miles down the road and they don't have to change their jobs, they'll abandon their home. We'll buy it up cheap. We'll bulldoze it. We'll build something else there. Okay, that's almost another way of saying urban renewal and gentrification and white flight all are twisted together in the same thing. The intentionality is good, and that is to raise the scale of income and education and opportunity for everyone. But the reality is, if you want to build something in that area, you've got to meet a very high standard. And if the bank won't loan you the money to do that, if the opportunity isn't already in your pocket, the next opportunity isn't coming. In one of Majora Carter's videos, she talks about a bridge, a highway that was built through the South Bronx to connect Westchester and some of the other upper affluent communities to Manhattan proper. She said to this day, less than 15% of the traffic uses that roadway. And yet it displaced almost 750,000 people who owned their homes. The highway simply took their land by eminent domain. They lost their place to live. They had to move. And because it was basically an under bridge, under asphalt community now, obviously that changes the greenery, it changes the scenery, it changes the income level, it changes the opportunity. They didn't just displace homes, they displaced places of business. People who had jobs working at a business that now no longer exists, they didn't just lose their home, they lost their ability to earn an income to buy another one. But see, I can picture, and I don't know this for a fact, but I can picture a team of guys sitting around going, hey, I got a construction company. I need a project. I need some money. The government has money. What construction project could I do? Could you do? Could we do? Could make us both some money? And I can see, and again, I wasn't there. I don't know. But I can see that meeting culminating in, well, let's build a highway from here to here because there's good reason to do it. There's good money to do it. We can get everybody to sign off on it. And the reality is there were probably 2 or 3 dozen people who made a boatload of money on that project without regard for the 750,000 people whose life was impacted by it. See, those are the kinds of things that happen at city council. Those are the kinds of things that happen behind closed doors or over a fancy lunch. Those are the kinds of things that happen on the golf course when no one whose life will be impacted by it has any say in the meeting. I'm not hating on anybody in particular. I'm just asking if the processes that we employ are beneficial to everyone in our society, to everyone in our community. See, I know that in the white community and the Hispanic community and the black community, All over the globe, there are signs of poverty. It's not just a racial thing, it's a mindset thing. It may be the environment that you grew up in, it may be the people that trained you, it may be just your view of the world. But once that poverty mindset has set in, all of those things, like the type of job that you seek. I don't really want a job where I have to show up every day. I just want some cash today. That kind of mindset creeps in like a cancer. The idea that, well, I've only got 20 bucks in my pocket and I'd really like to have that pack of smokes or that bottle of alcohol or that visit to the bathhouse, whatever that addiction is that's driving the quality of your life into the ground, that's not racial. That's mindset. But that also says if I've only got that 20 bucks and I need X amount of that for a fix, that I'm going to eat the cheapest food that I can get, which is probably going to be a fast food, or it's going to be off the shelf at the convenience store. And it's probably going to be something that I know having a little bit of it will make me feel full, even though my body will get no nutrition and no sustenance from it. So I'm going to drink high sugary, high fats, high cholesterol foods, which are probably going to make me sick faster. Now I'll be on the public hospital with my diabetes, and the public hospital with my high blood pressure, and the public hospital with my migraine headaches, and the public hospital with my, and the list goes on and on. And people who live in that cycle don't have health care, and so they treat the ER as a local doctor. And then they become a tax burden. And if that doesn't happen, then the same group of people, and again, this isn't about race, this is about a poverty mindset and a poverty system that continues to push people who don't make enough money into the same little pool so we can watch them like fish in a bowl, control them. We provide just enough care for them in the neighborhoods that they're in, that they can't get out. And if they do feel like I'm smart enough to leave, I can get a better job than this, I could live in a better house than this. I don't want my children being killed in a drive-by shooting at 3 a.m. because the drug-dealing 12-year-old next door to me didn't pay his dealer on time. I don't want my family in that environment, and I'm smart enough to know how to get out of there. And so the intelligence of that community leaves. And the hope to revitalize it leaves with it. I know I'm on a little bit of a soapbox today, but remember, my purpose in life is leading leaders. And I want to challenge those of you who have the opportunity to be a part of the city council, to be part of the zoning and planning commissions, to ask yourself the question, have we made decisions that benefit a few wealthy, a few who are willing to make an investment, a few who could get a good return, a few who might give us some votes later on, at the expense of tens, thousands, hundreds of thousands who have no say in how their life is going to be lived? I'm just asking. Remember, the 4 pillars of the Learn to Roar leadership philosophy are relevant, ownership, authority, and responsible. And at the end of the day, you're responsible for how you leave everyone else when you're done. How do they feel when you're done speaking? How beneficial is their life when you've walked away from it? If you're a leader who makes decisions that impact families for the long term like that, if you're the guy building a bridge because it will benefit you and your family and your grandkids from the multiple millions of dollars that you'll put in the bank, and ignore the 600,000 people who are about to be homeless and lose their jobs, will you take a moment and responsibly think through that again? And the next time you're driving through some of these communities, ask yourself, if you're in the Metroplex, as an example, when you drive through South Lake, why can't you find a pawn shop? Why can't you find a liquor store? Why can't you find a 99-cent video store? Because the city code doesn't allow it. But go to Duncanville, go to DeSoto, go to South Oak Cliff. You'll find more of those than you will gas stations. There's a reason. And that zoning, planning, designing has a direct impact on the poverty level, the education level, the opportunity level of those communities. I haven't done nearly as much homework and research and impact on this concept as Majora Carter. And I am sure that my ignorance of these issues only scratches the surface of what's really there. I will continue to do research on it because it's an issue that, frankly, it bugs me. I've heard words like white privilege and just sat dumbfounded at all of the meaning that lies behind it. But when you add together white privilege and urban renewal and gentrification, you got to start asking some honest questions of yourself, of your community, of your society, of the things that you invest your time, your talent, and your money in. Am I making a difference that's worthwhile or worth money? Am I making a difference only for me? Or am I doing something that will benefit others for a long time to come? I don't have all the answers to those questions. But I know for myself, I will begin to work even harder to make sure the leadership that I offer leads people towards success and a hope and a success mindset and not a poverty mindset. I hope this has been an inspirational talk for you today. And I hope it will at least get the wheels turning and make you ask the question, who is Majora Carter and why do I care? I'm J Loren Norris and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.